Welcome to Exist Better Conscious Conversations. Today I'm talking to Dr. Pat Boulogne all about chiropractic, acupuncture, functional medicine, and mindset. How all of these practices that Dr. Pat has studied in depth over the years come together for a full holistic whole body understanding and healing. This is an inspiring conversation. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Dr. Pat, to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much. I am thrilled to be here and being with you. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, we had a conversation before and it was so lovely. I feel like we were really aligned. So I'm really excited to get into all of the areas that you have covered in your career. But I'd love to start first with how you came to all of this, how you started into this path of, functional medicine, chiropractic. What interested you initially?
Well, I always go back to this story that I talk about as a kid, in maybe like around 9, 10 years old. And I asked my mother, I said, do you think if you ate a popsicle outside, it was dead of winter, popsicle outside, I said that, you wouldn't be cold anymore? And my mother just said, I don't know. Why don't you go try it? And so I did.
Yeah.
And when I went out there, I just went because I thought, well, I'm equalizing the inside of my body to the outside, so I'm not going to be as cold. I mean, it's kind of a silly. It's like, and it's really somewhat. The experiment worked, because I wasn't cold. But it's just I didn't stay out that long to see how long I could stay outside either at that time. But I always had a huge interest in science, and I always was asking why. Why is that? Can you do this? Can you try this? And I always thought that it was always worth a try. My father always said, keep on thinking outside the box. And if you don't try it, then you don't know. You don't know if you like escargot until you actually eat escargot. And other things in life, not just what you would eat, but also what you would do. And so I've had a philosophy for a very long time that if it's not harmful, you should at least try it. It might
Yeah.
not be for you, but you can try it because that way you have expansion in your life. And so
Yeah.
doing that was what led me to always think in that pattern. So when something didn't make sense to me, because I'm very commonsensical, solution driven, I want to know why does something work and what's the right answer, not just an answer. What's the right answer in order to go from point A to point C? And I took that through my education, in all my science classes, and then I worked at the University of Michigan Hospital and as a patient relations advocate, as an independent study, and I went around greeting people, something that I do, I love being the MC, at an event, and I love being, at fundraisers, they always had me at the door because, they said, "You always collect the most money for the fundraising." I would just say, because they're there to buy a ticket anyway. I said, "You got $100 on you? Oh, you have 50? Great. Well, you can get 10 tickets instead of 20." So I go, how about, I go, hand over that $50. You're at a fundraiser, And then this guy said, how do you get people to give you that much money? I said, I just tell them to give it to me. And so, and then here, I'll put your name on all your tickets for you, and it worked out really, really well. But I always really liked that type of interaction and that uplifting because I could see the end of the road before I actually got there. And I think
Yeah.
that when you learn how to do that in your life, a lot of things are a lot easier. Or on the way
Yeah.
when you're going, you might say, I think that was the wrong turn. At the next dead end, I'm going to make a right or I'm going to make a left.
Yeah.
And I'm going to change my mind about it because it's okay to change your mind. It's okay
Yeah.
to do something else, right? And so
Mhm.
chiropractic for me was like an extension of, and it was very helpful when I first went to chiropractic school. I used to get these really horrible migraine headaches. And then I had somebody adjust me and I got them less. And I got them and I get more adjusted. I no longer
Mhm.
had allergies. I slept really well. And my grade point went up. It went up from like a 3.2 close to it's almost to a 4.0.
Wait,
And it was
what?
Yeah, it went, it's just like, it helped me with focus, I guess that you could say, like, when someone's looking at focus and intention. Because when you study a lot of medical stuff, you have to memorize, and you
Yeah.
have and that memorization sometimes can be very not dangerous, but it's very draining,
Mm.
and, and then you have to spit all that information out. When you're looking at a test sheet of paper. And so I learned about affirmations. I learned about like how to like reposition my thought process to like, I'm going to, like, I studied this. I deserve to pass this test with flying colors. There's no question that they can ask me that I don't know the answer to. And
Yeah.
then lo and behold, I started, my grade points was like, and started going up higher and higher to see people, be in pain. Not that they're the fun part of being in pain, but when they got up and they're going, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
that feels so much better. My neck, like, look at I can turn my neck." I just had a woman come in and she said, "I've been coming." She saw the other doctor in the office, and she said, "I don't know what you did the last time I was in here, but look at Dr. Pat. I can turn my head all the way to the left. I've never been able to do that for 10 years." So, things just made sense to me and they all kind of fit in. It's just like in how the muscles lay on top of one another and what they do and why when this muscle gets damaged and like why does that affect the whole the trail or train of those muscles that intercommunicate with each other from your head to your feet. It's just very fascinating to me. So it's just that
It
big and
is.
I love puzzles. I love solving puzzles. So that the human body certainly is a big puzzle. So it's really
Yeah.
like when it just kept on leading one thing into the other and the such and then I had people surrounding yourself or having people around you that are in the same mission because my class was really the all for one and one for all.
It sounds amazing. And I haven't had a chiropractor on the show
Mhm,
before. So there's a few things you've mentioned that I just want to for people listening, you mentioned about migraines
mhm.
and you also mentioned about allergies. Could we just go back to those for a moment?
Sure, what would you like to know about them?
This is something that could help.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm aware of
First
that.
well, most of the, from teachers that I studied underneath, and most of my teachers are people who invented the techniques. So that's how old I am. And they had my one teacher always said, just because someone's got something doesn't mean that they got it.
Yeah.
It could be that's how they're manifesting that symptom. You
Yes.
and I learned that majority of headaches, especially migraine headaches, are metabolic related. And then it
Right.
even is like, verified like in Chinese medicine because, for instance, migraine headaches have a lot of heat with them and it relates back to the liver. And so in the liver, when it gets congested and it gets angry, it has a tendency to like what they call in Chinese medicine invade the small intestine, the large intestine. It can invade the spleen. It's just like it gets angry. It's kind of like because its job is to put chi or energy all over the body, and so it's whatever your weak link is, it's going to aim for it. And because that wakes
Yeah.
you up and say, "Well, I got a problem, and how do I fix it?" And so that part about the migraine, and it taught me to eat better. It seemed like every time that if my system was off and I ate tuna fish, I would get a migraine headache. And I'm
No
thinking,
way.
"Maybe I don't have to eat like, maybe I can stop eating tuna." And I did, because when I had a migraine, I was out for the whole day. And I said, "I
Yeah.
don't have, 24 hours in my life that I'm willing to give up anymore because I have a headache." And I never
Yeah.
thought I went to a Catholic school, so they always said, "Continue doing your work, you'll get over it." Just
So true.
yeah, and then take the pointer and tap you put your right on your shoulder to say, "Sure you wanna say that?" So it's like
Yeah.
no, I'm fine. I'll forget that part. And allergies, so you have to think about migraines, they relate to your gut, foods that you eat, and how you handle them,
Yeah.
and also allergies. I've never met one person in my 30, 40-year career that had allergies that didn't have some kind of gut problem, ever.
Wow.
And so when someone tells me that they have allergies and they're taking allergy medication, I said, "You're just suppressing, and you're suppressing the symptoms, and as they suppress the symptoms, then wherever they coagulate at, they will
Mhm.
go into your weakest link. and you don't wanna do that, so that's one of the reasons why that when I wrote the book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, which is a book of questions, it tells you where your weakest link's at, and it also tells you where your strongest link's at. It's much
Yeah.
better to know where your strongest link's at because then what your baseline foundation is, and most people that today have no clue what their baseline foundation is.
Yeah, so
So
true. Yeah.
so if you can find out what that is and you can fortify that baseline foundation, so you always know if crap hits the fan, this is what I got going for me, and keeping an eye on that. And
Yeah.
that's one of the awarenesses about your health that that book really gives you, and also gives you an opportunity to go find a person that can relate to those types of that type of testing, because it's not your typical Western medicine type of testing, that you would say, like, if someone's like, "You migraine headache, oh, here's some migraine medicine for you." This is
Mm.
known to work for people, and it's like, how about lifestyle changes? I mean, everyone who's taken
Yeah.
GLP-1,
Yes.
the shot, it's dangerous. It's just like they don't really know what's going to happen down the line, and there's a lot of really bad side effects from that. It's just like, why not take natural GLP-1 and
Yeah.
change your diet so that it's supportive of that? And so then you wouldn't have the allergies. And
Wow.
one of my teachers, he's no longer alive, his name was Victor Frank. Um, I was in New York City, and I was a brand new chiropractor of, like, maybe 2 years in business, and, my husband at the time and I were there, and I had the worst someone was smoking, I wanted to get up in a restaurant and go over and strangle them. I just couldn't stand the smell of it. It just was
Yeah.
it was a very visceral and very motor type of reaction,
Mm.
and, so this guy just he literally, in less than 5 minutes, fixed me of that allergy. And when I went out that night and we went to have dinner, it was when they were still smoking in restaurants, here in the United States, and so there isn't like it's like an immediate veil, like a smoke, you can only stay on that side of that veil. And I was on the other side. It had no effect on me at all, the smoke. And I just went like then I went, "I wanna learn what this guy knows. I want him to teach me."
That is
Because there's
amazing.
so many people that, can be helped just by, like, doing things like when I did allergy work with people, I had a woman who had psoriasis for years. Her hands looked like, oh, it was, like, scary, and when she had more of an outbreak, she even moved her hands, her hands would start bleeding. And so I said, "How about," I go, "How bad do you wanna change that?" And so we worked on her diet, we worked on where her different organ systems would rally off from each other. Because you
Mm.
think like, "Oh, it's gotta be the stomach." No, not necessarily. It could be the small intestine, it could be like a kidney, it could be the bladder that is contributing to, like, how your body responds in reaction to a sign or a symptom. And so it's just like, well, it makes me, like, I'm always, going to the bathroom and I'm always peeing, it's just like, well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean it's the bladder, you know? What it
Yeah.
means is it's like you gotta, like, look at, like, the big picture and, like, what's the pattern and where's that pattern, like, where does it lead me? And then you follow sometimes your given instinct, and you look for the right solution that is safer, that's quicker, and that's simpler. So
Yeah.
you don't have to, like, bog down. There's a couple purification programs that when I read them, I went, "Wait a minute, what did I just read?" Yeah, I'm a physician, I gotta be able to explain this to someone. And it's just like, "I'm gonna make this more simple so that it's a non-brainer." It's like if you want to tonify your liver, gallbladder, your internal organs so that they're functioning better, here's a product that promises to do that in a specific time. And maybe it will be a longer period of time depending on how severe your symptoms are. And not everybody reacts to the same thing anyway, the same way.
Yeah.
So sometimes a person who has allergies, I'm gonna go like, oh, you got sinus stuff too, right? And they're like, how do you know that? And I said, well, and there's just and
Yeah.
you like to drink hot things or you like to drink cold things, depending upon what else that they tell me that's in their pattern. So there's things that go along with that. Um, in regards to, like, the allergies that you can fix. I mean, generally
Yeah.
speaking, just as as a gift of information, don't eat, don't drink milk, orange juice, or most juices but especially orange juice, and or any other dairy products
Yeah,
because they will create more mucus in your body, and your body
so
has to
true.
make that mucus, and if your body is running hot, like in Chinese medicine hot, then it will make that mucus coagulate into phlegm.
Yeah.
And then people wonder why they're coughing their heads off when they first get up in the morning, and it's just like, your body's just like it's a jug full of phlegm. You got to look at how do I get rid of that? What can I do to improve that function and that timeline with that? That's what's, that's important, for to be able to like, figure that out. And then you do it. What herb can I take? Because there's always a side effect of some medical drug. And sometimes and some of them just aren't made for you to take for your whole life. And that's a
Yeah.
question for people to always ask, like, how long do I have to take this? If it's short term, sometimes you need to have that emergency quick fix to kick
Mm.
your body in, but then look for like other different ways to elevate your life. Well, always in the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and maybe even financial.
Yes. I love that you are so determined to get to the root cause.
Uh-huh,
I think we live in a world sometimes that just puts a band-aid over what's going on,
uh-huh,
and you're really looking at the underlying causes and what's connected.
uh-huh. Yep. You
I
have
love
to.
that.
If you don't, it's just like, it's like if you have a car and your car keeps on running and put gasoline in it and it's supposed to have premium gas, but you're giving it the low grade gas, eventually you're going to have a lot of gumming up and you're going to have like a blocked artery, in your
Yeah.
car. And you're going to, and then suddenly you're spending, or like not paying attention to those signs and symptoms, and then suddenly you have to buy a new car, or you're getting another set of tires. Like, why are you getting another set of tires? Why is the car not holding its alignment? And in those just those things like, in the wear and tear of it, the ball joints, the tie rod. The only reason why I know so much about cars is my father, when he retired from being an executive, he had a couple gas stations and he made me learn how to and when I tell guys this, they always go like, you can do that? Not anymore. And I grew up, knowing how to do those things.
Yeah. N So all of this then obviously led you to explore even further.
Oh, for
And
sure.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
with functional medicine and acupuncture.
Functional medicine acupuncture to me was a natural progression because I actually was more interested in the herbs than I was in the needles. One of the reasons is because, according to my lovely crazy uncle who's no longer with us, our ancestor settled Quebec City for the country of France at the time. And so he left France in order to create part of that colony. And he was an apothecary. And his father was an apothecary also. So when I found that out and I went to Quebec City to explore that, I called my girlfriend up. I said, "Oh my God, it's true." I go, "He didn't lie." And she said, Patricia, she went, "You tell someone to take calcium, they're going, 'How much?'" They don't give you a hard time about it. You say, "You need to take this," or, it's just like, and I also, one of the things, the way that I either coach or in their practice, I never tell people to do something I haven't tried myself, or
Mm,
I don't have extensive research knowledge in. And
yeah,
because you can't do everything and try it. But there's some things that just absolutely make no sense to me. And I will be the first person to say, it doesn't make sense to me, but go research it out and let me know what you
mm,
find. And then I'll help you create the correct questions to advocate so that you can ask your medical doctor questions that are relevant to you and not talk about this dog or something, something else, or
yeah,
get misled down a different line.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all of this kind of came together then for you.
Mhm. And it
You
keeps
were
them.
looking at it from multiple angles.
And absolutely, and the multiple angles, I just think that because I believe that you're led sometimes into a certain path, and when I
Yeah.
decided to become a chiropractor, a lot of things just fell in place. and the where I went to school. Even my ex-husband's French, and his father was a chiropractor and an osteopath and a physical therapist. So I had a lot of exposure, and I knew a lot of French chiropractors and Italian chiropractors. It just gave you a huge exposure to the rest of the
Mm.
world. And then you would meet somebody who there was a guy out of Milan or Lake Como that had this TNJ, and how he worked on
Yeah.
TMJ. And when I was in Boston, I had one of the top 3 specialists, implant specialists, as my normal dentist. And so I was telling him, like, I just got back from being in Venice and they were studying it, this showing how they like to work on TMJ. And so he goes, "Do you want to meet the person in the United States that's probably one of the most important people in TMJ?" And he goes, "He lives in Boston. Do you want to meet him?" And I went, "Sure." And I said, "My girlfriend's coming, who's at that conference, to Boston in 2 weeks." I go, "Maybe we can set something up so she can come along too." So it was just like this, like, wonderful
Wow.
interaction, and I had those sequences like for of like my whole career. There's always that one
Wow.
person's like, "How do you do this?" Or I'd forget like how to adjust a shoulder. It's like 'cause I didn't do it for a long time, and I had a ski accident that kept me out of work for quite a while. And so when I was during that time, I said, "Oh, I could adjust people's shoulders. I don't need to pick someone's like side way up or pick their head up. I can adjust their shoulders." And so I became known as the shoulder queen. And I have people who I came in and I said, "I'm filling in today for Dr. Mike," and they would say, this guy was in, Gainesville, Virginia, and this girl goes, "Oh, no, 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 you're not filling in for Dr. Mike." And I said, "Well, I'm Dr. Pat, I'm filling in for Dr. Mike." And I said, "If you call me Mike, I'll answer to that name also, just in case you get confused." And she goes, "No, no, no, no." She said, "He told me that you were the shoulder queen."
I
And
love
she
it.
goes, "I need you to fix my shoulders," and I had so many people who he sent in when I was gone, smart on him to keep his office busy, and just to work on his shoulders, and I had people go, "I'll give you anything you want," I said, "Take a gold bullion, silver, platinum, all of them work for me," and people would have this guy said, "I can't afford you," and I said, "You can't afford not to have me." And,
Yeah.
and adjusting this one guy's shoulder, I had offices that I worked in, like, multiple times, and they would call people up who I worked on their shoulders just so they come back in. They go, "She's ever back here again, let me know." And it's for me, it was so simple.
Mm.
It's like something that was like it came to me like if you're putting a hot knife through butter, it's just like it just made tons of sense to me. So I just replicated what I learned and I apply it even to this day with people even had shoulder surgery and they have better range of
Mm.
motion when I'm done and that.
Wow.
And so it's wild and it's like it's fun. So and I get a lot of joy out of seeing people, not just mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, and that whole spiel, but when they have a success like that, then they
Mm.
can go out and they can do their own life a lot better, and
Yeah.
my goal is to have them tell somebody else
Ah.
because word of mouth is powerful.
Well, I wanna hop on a flight.
Okay, let's go.
I want a full overhaul.
You can bring me there. I'll work on you there.
Okay, brilliant, yeah. Wow. Oh, it sounds amazing. So you're working with the body, you're also working with the mind,
Hmm.
you're working with energy, chi and all of that.
Hmm.
Um, Spirit really. It's like mind, body, spirit what you're doing.
Hmm. For sure. And you don't have when I'm taking a refresher course right now in NLP, and that's neuro linguistic programming. And
Mm.
I'm listening to this. It's a very basic course, right? I have to get tested out at the very end of it. I haven't taken an ounce of notes, and so I just record it, and I take the recording, and then I say have AI summarize it for me, and so that go. If I was taking a test, what do I need to know out of the script? And just so I have it like, organized in that regard. But it's interesting, when this guy works with someone, a live person, and taking them and like looking at what their beliefs are and like where they
Mm.
got their beliefs. So, for instance, there was a time in my office was doing an exam on somebody, and they had a quarter fall out of their pocket, and they just continue talking. And when I said, "Aren't you," excuse me, I said, "Aren't you gonna pick the quarter up?" And I was curious about it because they looked right at the quarter on the ground and they just continued. And so after a couple minutes of talking to them, they said, "Well, to tell you the truth, my mother told me that money on the ground is dirty and that you should never pick it up because people can give you diseases from it."
Oh my God.
And I said to her, "Do you really believe that? Are you listening to yourself talk?" And she said to me, and she goes, "Honest to God, Dr. Pat, that's what my mother told me." And then I said, "No, I believe you." And I said, "But I don't believe that you believe her." And
Mm,
I said, "Do you really think that money?" So if I pick that money up, I'm going to die like right now, right? And
mm,
she started to laugh. And I said, "But I'm serious." I said, "If I pick that money up, then and it's if it's bad, then it's evil." So are you telling me the root of all money is evil?
yeah.
And I said, "Are you telling me that just that quarter is, or all money that's on the ground?" And I said, "Because you can use it in a different way, and how you can use it in a different way, you can pick it up and go to the bathroom if it's so meaningful for you and wash it."
Mm,
You know, you can also pick it up and say, "I don't buy that." It's like when you go on an airplane, it's just like the person who's flying the plane, you don't go in there and say, "Can I see your credentials?"
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, and so you have to take like, your belief system about this. I said, "So, how many times have you seen quarters in your life on the ground or billiards?" I said, "One time I put my hand in the ice when I was working as a waitress when I was studying to go to my pre-chiropractic stuff, my pre-medical stuff. I put my
Mm,
hand in the ice and I'm thinking to myself, what idiot put paper in the ice?" And I was thinking, because everybody's hands were in there. I mean, like you used a scoop, but when I felt this paper, I looked at it, it was $100 bill. And I thought, money magnet. And so,
yeah.
yeah, and you should look at the quarter, and look at it as money magnet and put it
Yeah.
back in your pocket. Now pick it up.
Yeah. And
And
did they pick it up?
she picked it up. She looked at it, and you could tell she was, like, having she was struggling with a little bit, and she put it in her pocket, and I said, "So does it feel better in your pocket than in somebody else's?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "I'd have to say, looking at it like that, it does." And I said, "So from now on, when you see a penny, I mean,
Mm,
they're gonna be extinct one day." And I said, "Put it in here and just, like, notice just, like, money magnet." And I
yeah.
said, "Because that attracts more abundance to you, that mindset." And I said,
Yeah.
"So what'd you
It
learn about
does.
today?" And she said, "I get healthy in here physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually." It's because I use that line all the time. And she said, "I've never had anybody explain something like that to me before." And she goes, "It just makes total sense." And she
Mm,
became the best patient ever.
wow.
And she was very open to things, and it was really a great transformation to witness that because you
Mm,
could see it in her face, you know,
yeah.
and um, and so that piece about, like having those things that hinder us, because when we have those belief systems, they hinder our health.
Mm,
They hinder our mentality,
yeah.
and they like when you go to elevate, you keep on going back to that thing going, "Oh, well, why is it that, every time I get a good job, I do really great at it until a certain moment. Why is it that I get into relationships, and whether it's at work or whether it's a personal relationship, and they're great,
Yeah.
anybody can be on their best behavior for 180 days. It's that
Mm,
after the 180-day mark, and when you start seeing those nuances and like quirks that you're thinking, you have to say, can I really live with that? And some people keep on asking that question for 40 years. And when
wow.
you're with the wrong relationship, whether it's career or whether it's in your personal life, it affects your health,
Yeah. Of course.
and it's just like and I take a lot of those emotions and you put them inside your body and they settle someplace in your body in some organ system. So in the
Yeah.
book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? It points out that organ system. And if you
Yeah.
know what organ system it is, you can do something about it because there's
And
always
I will
something to
link
do.
to that book so people can
Yep.
check it out.
Awesome. Great. I
Wow.
appreciate that. You know,
So this is all amazing, and then you bring this into the people you work with in performance, longevity,
for
optimization. You're
mhm.
bringing all of these different modalities.
Into when I'm working with people for sure. All
Yeah.
the time. 'Cause, but someone once said to me, when I was, got off stage and something, they go, "But you're just a chiropractor." And I said, "I have to tell you something, I'm much more than just a chiropractor." And,
Mm.
and I
Yeah.
think like, 'cause people want people in the box of what they know to be true. And in that box of what we know what could be true, some of our solutions aren't there. Our
Yeah.
solutions are way over there sometimes, or, you know, you're you're like driving through, you're looking for something, you're at a store and you're thinking, I can't find this. And then you meet somebody and go, do you know anything about? And they go, oh, yeah, you know what you can do? There's something right over here. Come over here. I'll show it to you. You never see
Yeah.
that person again, but you always bless them for their highest good.
Yeah.
But there's always the thing that when people for optimization for executives and entrepreneurs and high performers, when I had the pleasure of connecting with the Kenyan runners and for more than one race, and there was like, they would
Mm.
run the Falmouth Road Race, they run the Boston Marathon, and that's in Massachusetts is where I would see them. And but they always worked as a team.
Yeah.
When I think about working with people, I always work with people as a team because
Mm.
I want to see them elevate. And a team
Mm.
can't elevate unless there's a good leader,
Yeah.
And so when people are looking at like, why is it, I know I'm doing a lot of things right. But I love those people because I'm going, there's always something you can do, or there's always a different slant on something that you don't think that you can do, but you can do because you actually can
Mm.
do anything you put your mind to. And
Completely.
then that is where, that I love, like, when I'm, working with people, especially women, because women, we have this, like, I do it too. It's just like when, we have this, we're multitask automatically. It's in our DNA,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
there's a woman who I just saw the other day in this practice here, and she was from China, and I recognized her name, and I said, "Oh, ni hao," and she goes, "You know Chinese?" And I said, "I'm a Chinese physician." So, I know some Chinese. My Chinese does not sound like Chinese, though. I can guarantee you that. My teachers would always say, "Write it out." Instead of
Yeah.
trying to pronounce it. It's like, "Write it out, Dr. Pat." And but, it's just like we're talking about how people do things, and she has 2 kids that are now 12, and 10, and I said, "When they were growing up, you held them on one side of your hip,
Mm.
and while
Yeah.
you're holding the hip, you were cooking, you were doing dishes, you were doing other things, you were grocery shopping, you were doing things." It's just like, but you always held them on that hip, which makes you have a distortion. So you gave
Yeah.
up function, you know, and you added a little distortion into your body that you didn't pay attention to, until 12 years later.
Mm. Yeah.
And so when you don't pay attention to the wheels on your car, and we talked about that before,
Mm.
or the alignment, or how your car is running, and you're running your car on, you want to be the super performer, but you're not putting premium gasoline in your tank.
Exactly.
And that means, everything, like, your thoughts, your deeds, do good deeds, have fun, do good deeds, and help everybody else along the way because we're all uplifting,
Yeah.
and that's where, like, because the rising, I mean, I just thought of this quote, a rising tide, raises all boats, but your boat's got to be checked out first so there's no holes in it and it's not
Yeah.
leaking.
Yeah.
Because if you can do that, then you have a bigger solid foundation. So if crap hits the fan, you got a cushion,
Yeah.
and also surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and,
Yeah.
being able to do that because that's what carries you forward and through. It's just like I can remember being at a women's conference. It was a mastermind conference. It was in Orlando. And this woman said, she handed out these flyers to everybody, and you had to check off all the things that you had fear on, and then the next flyer she handed out to us was like, what do you do when you are in this state? Like in this, the one side, the right side was despair and fear and anger, and things like that. And the other side was joy, contentment, abundance, because it's a mindset shift. She goes, how long does it take for you to read one side to the other side? And when you go from one side to the other side, how long does it take to have that shift from
Mm.
the right side to left side, the negative side to the positive side? It's a New York nanosecond. And then
Yeah.
and it was interesting that she had us read the negative side first and then read the positive side, because what's left? You put a little sugar on that thought process. And when you do that, you keep on repeating that thought process. If you are talking to the three brains, like your conscious brain, your mammalian brain, and the other brain that you would use would be I call it the lizard brain, but it's the primitive brain. And the primitive brain's like, save me from the saber-toothed tiger. Oh my God, that guy just pulled in front of me. Bang. Like you don't want to hit the car. So that's that primitive brain, because it's going to keep you alive. It
Mm.
gives you survival tactics, or should. Then you have the mammalian brain that stores everything that happens that way, and it stores everything that happens in your consciousness, and it stores it in one place. This
Mm.
is how I learned this. And then that one place in the mammalian brain. So when things happen to you, it doesn't have to be the same thing. Your body will react in the same fashion. So if you're having, it's just like if you, like, someone goes, I've dated so many men, I still can't find the right guy for me. It's because you're still dating the same guy.
Yeah.
You haven't changed. You're still dating the same guy. Unfortunately, they look
Yeah.
different, but you're still dating the same guy. You can't change unless you change who you're dating. And you having
Yeah.
that realization, when you understand that, then your check marks are more on the left side where the positive part's at. And then where the negative part of it is just like, that's not the guy for me. It's
Mm.
just like, nice to know you. Gotta go.
Yeah.
I have dinner to make for myself or something like that. Right. I mean,
Exactly.
so they like, and our behaviors keep on perpetuating based upon what happened. And then, but when you learn something, the mammalian brain learns it too. And so it's like, oh, you don't have to do that. And that's why affirmations for some people are all they need. But for other people, what I would behoove anybody to do is not only say the affirmation, like I am vital, active, successful human being. I tell you also say why. Why is it that I'm a vital, active, successful human being? Why is it that I love to see people elevate?
Mm.
And then your mammalian brain's going, oh, yeah, you had this experience here. And you had this here. So if you keep on feeding that cycle, you have many more positive things that happen to you.
I
And
love that.
it's beautiful, because it's just, thinking, wow, that's all. And yes, that's all, because you. And then when you slip back, just because you slip back, I always tell people, if you make a mistake on your diet, just stop, take a deep breath, and make a correction on your next meal. That's all you got to
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up. Move forward. Keep moving forward. KMF. And if you keep on doing that, then you keep on like feeding, that positivity and feeding that momentum. And when you have
Mm.
that momentum, if like-mindedness attracts like-mindedness, then you start collecting the right people around you and then you have the behavior, of a successful person. Because,
Wow.
if you, it's like, you think, executives and entrepreneurs and, presidents of countries and, in the such, they don't make mistakes. They don't stop and go like, oh my God, I'm not going to do anything anymore. This is like, okay, what did I learn from that? What
Yeah.
is it that happened that I need to know in order to still move forward and probably never do that again? Because that situation is probably going to come back and test you again and again and again,
Yeah.
and learning to say no is, it's just like, it's a healthy now. It's like, I don't think so this time, it says, I think you need to go find somebody else to go hang out with this, but,
Yeah.
but you learn from it, and then you create that as a tool in your toolbox. Because if it helped you, you could help somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's when I think you don't leave anybody behind.
Yeah. I love that. And this toolbox.
Uh-huh.
So you bring this into creating longevity for your clients in their
Absolutely.
careers.
if you can think it, you can have it, and when you think about longevity, I mean, it's just like somebody asked me how old, do I want to be, and like how long do I want to live, and the
Okay.
first number for like 10 years came out like 120. It sounded like a great number. It still rings for me. But somebody asked me about a couple years ago, and I said, no, I no longer want to live to be 120. And I said, I want to live to be 140.
Oh,
And I said, so, and they're going like, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I said, so far, I said, and there's things that I need to pay attention to. I need to, um, especially like with energy healing and things like that. Though there's those things have existed forever
right.
out there. There's now tools in order for to help you even support that even more. But in knowing that, if you can find your glitch, there's a lot of longevity clinics. But what does longevity mean? To me, it means like living healthy as possible and longer.
Yeah.
It's just like when I gave up, and I had this experience when I was in chiropractic school with this MD doctor who was very outside box thinking. So clearly, when I tell you this, you're going to say that guy's not wasn't. Are you sure he was an MD? He's definitely an MD. Um, but he did this work with somebody one time, and he had started like looking at like what was the energy value. Like look at Brian Weiss, who did past lifetime. He was a
Yes.
medical doctor who was doing psychology, and he's a psychiatrist, right? Because he's MD,
Yeah.
and he helped people do past lifetime regressions because he couldn't explain why they had a certain situation happen because there was no logical reason. But when they were under hypnosis, they told him stories. And there's no denying it. It's such a great mind-opening book that's outside a lot of people's 9 dots, or that
It's
box,
amazing.
you know? And so, if you wanna have longevity, you gotta clear the cobwebs out. You gotta look for the cobwebs. You don't you have to wait for them to look for you. You wanna get them out. I mean, when you spring clean your house, you don't let a bunch of cobwebs hang out, It's just
Yeah.
and you get rid of them. You move them outside and so that they don't stay in your house. You create
Yeah.
ventilation, because you need air to breathe and to be, happy and healthy and have great habits. So it's the longevity part of it is more than just food. You
Yeah.
have to work on this guy up here, so that, you have more clarity. People who are depressed or have digestive issues that, I've never met somebody who's depressed who doesn't have a digestive issue. It's just like,
Mhm.
I like, I've been in practice for 40 years. There's always something. Someone has allergies that always relates back to digestion. Migraines always relates back to digestion. You have a choice of what you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
And if you know that, eating ice cream can kill you or kill you, maybe somebody else could eat it, but if you know that it's harmful for you, why would you ever put it in your mouth? Because you like it? Is that a
Yeah.
good reason? And it's just like, maybe once a year on your birthday, but like understanding that you're going like, okay, so do I feel good when I have this meal or do I feel
Mm.
kind of so-so? A so-so meal? I mean, why would you have it again?
Yeah.
And so and then, changing, changing things up and like, blessing your food for if you're ever stuck someplace and your only thing you can eat is like Skittles or something like that, you bless them for your highest good and then you eat them and you never touch them again. You like wash them out of your system.
Yes. Yes,
I always
totally.
tell people like this wasn't for your highest good, and because there's nothing you can do about where you're at a moment. Like if you're at a cocktail
Mm.
party and there's something there, or you're at some kind of party and they don't have any pure water, then don't drink water. Make iced tea, make
Mm.
lemonade when you have lemons, that kind of thing.
Yes,
Definitely
exactly.
right. And so it's the longevity part of it is that there's a lot of facets to it. And what I find from a lot of high performers and they have a system. They wake up with the ritual. They wake up and they hydrate. They wake up, they brush their teeth. They wake up and do whatever they do in the bathroom. They come back out. They exercise. They do something. I create this for my clients too. Like, hey, what time do you have to get up? Okay, can you
Mm.
get up 40 minutes earlier? Like you don't have to get out of bed, but if you could get up 40 minutes earlier, could you listen to a meditation tape?
Mm.
Can you listen to a book? You want to read more books? Well, it's I go use 20 of those 40 minutes to listen to a book,
Mm.
and so if you want to exercise, do you do stretches? Like how to wake up so you're not blasting your cortisol like levels in your body. There's a lot
Mm.
of things that you can do, and little things that, I mean, I bought a light actually on my telephone. And so at morning at like at 6 o'clock, I had to change the time because it's getting lighter sooner here. So, the natural light comes on, so I'm not waking up to a light bulb in my face, and that's really, really bright. Because when you do
Yeah.
that, it shocks your system and it immediately stresses it out. And you want to like, how can I, mitigate so much stress? You mitigate it by going, what's the cause of it in the first place? And then going, what can I do
Mm.
to make that, better? And do I have energy all day long? And I do because I make sure my first whatever I put in my body is nutritious, and
Okay.
it's nutrient dense, and then I drink a lot of fluids, at least close to 60 to 75 ounces. I'm 6 feet tall and I weigh 150 pounds. I don't know what that equates to in centimeters and kilos. But um,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
somewhere like 70 or something like that in kilos. And
Yeah.
but at any rate, the point of that is that, you gotta take a look at what is it? If I wanna do this, if I really wanna do this, if I wanna spend time with my grandkids, I wanna spend time with my kids when they grow up, I wanna be active. I don't wanna watch them grow up. I wanna be part of their growing up. I wanna be
Yeah.
part of my community. Because when we heal ourselves, we heal those around us, and we heal, you know, and that's rather more contagious and more beneficial. That's on the left side of the paper, right? Because we're all going down and we're uplifting each other as you go along, and
Totally.
and so a lot of, executives and high performers, they have thought of the same issues as people who are not high performers. They just don't have them. They're more organized, and they're
Yeah.
more and they're intention and purpose driven. So like, what's your intention? What's your purpose? And then how do you want to get there? Right. And then when you do that, then you can make a better plan. But it's always make that better plan with somebody who actually knows how to make that plan, who can
Yeah.
help you be accountable, without making you feel like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. And it's like, as soon as you say that, you won't. This
Yeah.
is like because, if you like, you have to take out of the N apostrophe T out of the would, the can't, the should, um, because it's like then you see the possibility. When you see possibility, there's always something you can do. You can reach your dreams, and you just have to like, well, where am I have to be at in order to do that? So start where you're at. There's a rule called the rule of one. And the rule of one goes that says to you, like, I need to drink more water." Well, drink 1 glass of water the next day, "And I need to move." "Okay." Normally, like, I wanna, like, walk a mile a day. Let's say that that's a goal. It's just like 15 minutes in the sun is all you basically need on fleshy skin, like legs and arms, to help you create more vitamin D in your body.
Yeah.
And for those of us, for those people who live in sunny places, they should have a lot of vitamin D. They should not be vitamin D deficient.
I know, but I think people feel like there's so many things that you have to do now
Mhm,
or you hear about in order to be at your best.
mm,
And I think it feels overwhelming for people. And I love that you
uh-huh,
say just have the glass of water.
just
Just start with one if you're not drinking much.
mhm. And also, for water, a lot of people don't like water because they don't like the flavor of it, which could
Mm.
be how it's being processed. So don't drink water from a faucet. For a lot of
Right.
reasons. There's a lot of chemicals in it and a lot of dissolved solids. But
Yeah.
also, they don't like it because if they take it from a glass and drink it, psychologically speaking, when I had, abnormal psych years ago, the glass would hit people's noses, like when you go up like this. And what it does, it's like your brain says, I'm drowning. So what do people do when they're drowning? They try to get more air, and so while you're drinking the water, you're also swallowing air, which makes you not feel so good. So drink water from a straw,
Yes. So
you know?
simple.
Yep, and get a stainless steel one so you're not drinking
Mm,
plastics, you know,
yeah.
just as another pro bono. Anyways, I just thought that that was so interesting. I never drink water from a glass again, or if I did, I made sure the glass never hit my nose, and that's a
Yes.
little bit hard to do sometimes, and that. But I
Yeah.
always hydrate before I go to sleep, and I hydrate when I get up in the morning. That's my routine.
Because you do seem very energized
I'm like,
and passionate.
I'm,
I love all these tips. Any others?
well, I probably have a lot of them. You know, someone said I actually needed a ghostwriter because someone was just like, give me a topic, let's go grocery shopping. And it's just like, let's go sightseeing. Let's see like how people behave at certain things. And it's just like, why do people do that? Or I'll ask the person. It's like, hi, you don't know
Yeah.
me, and you probably will never see me again. But can I ask you a question? Are you limping because I said you have an injury, you have a short leg? Like, why are you limping? And does your back hurt from that? I used to do that when I had my chiropractic office. I would be in the airport, I'd be bored, 'cause my flight was delayed or whatever, and then that's how I met a lot of people, and so I had people who like, where are you from? I'm on Cape Cod. Have you ever been there? You should come there. It's beautiful. White sandy beaches, warm ocean breezes, but only in the summer. And I said, you can come. I said, if you come there, I said, give me a call. If I'm still living on Cape Cod, give me a call. Just say, I met you in the airport in Washington, or, wherever I met you. And, even the people who I'm very fortunate to have met, like, I always believe I'm going to meet nice people, and the universe would never put somebody in front of me who wasn't. They do it.
Oh, wow.
They keep it for my highest good. So it's just like when
Yes.
stuff isn't exactly working out, the universe never gives you more than what you can deal with. Sometimes I'm thinking, why are you giving me this much stuff to deal with today? You know,
Yeah.
but then I just say like, well, clearly I can do it.
Yeah.
So just do it and get it over with. Move forward.
Oh my God. You're amazing.
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
that so much. I feel like
Thank
I
you.
could talk to you forever.
Well, we probably could. We probably have. It's just-
Yeah.
I always laugh,
Oh,
and like if when people talk about past lifetimes and things like that, and like why do some places for some people feel so comfortable, and
exactly.
when I went to Paris was a challenge for me when I first went to it, um, but I like very shortly I put the map in my back pocket because I didn't want to look like a tourist, and I just went into like and started walking in a certain direction, and I would like let my uh, decide where I was gonna end up going or how I was gonna do it, but the city in Europe for me that was, like, so easy for me, was Rome, and
Wow.
so the first time I went to Rome, it's just like, some guy asked me I was celebrating my 27th birthday, and just so that your viewers know that I'm 71 going on 40, the but when I was 27, this guy said he wanted to go to the Colosseum, and he couldn't he kept on turning his map, like, all sorts of different ways, and I said to him, I go, "Are you lost?" And he said, "Speak English?" That's what I do. And I said, "Where do you wanna go?" He said, "The Colosseum." I said, "I'm going there right now. You wanna come with me?" I never met him before a day in my life. He was from Pakistan or something like that. And so, we went to the Colosseum, and we went I said, "First, we're gonna go to the Trevi Fountain. From the Trevi Fountain, we're gonna walk down the street, and we'll end up at the Colosseum." And so we did that, and at the very end, he took a bunch of pictures, and sang happy birthday to me, and down the street. He was funny. If you ask me what his name was, I have no clue. And but at when about 8 years later, my father called me up and said, "You have a package from somebody from British Columbia that's sitting here. Do you want me to open it up?" I went, "I don't know anybody in British Columbia," and to tell you the truth. And so I said, "Go ahead." I mean, I have no clue what it is. So my father just said, "They're pictures of you in Italy." And it's in the Colosseum, and there's a small jar
Wow.
of, that is a canned, chutney because he was Indian, and I just said to like, "Spicy chutney," and I went, "I know who that is," My father said, "I thought you didn't know who it was." And I said, "No, I picked this guy up in the square in the Piazza Repubblica who was gonna go to the Coliseum, and he couldn't know how to get there, so I walked him over there." But, Rome has always been easy for me for directions,
You
I
lived
just
a
don't.
past life there.
Yeah, I did, but maybe, and even other parts of Italy. Italian is easy for me to speak. I pronounce it
Mm.
so much better than I do French. And there's just some words in Italian though too that come out, they went marbles. Just,
Yeah.
and it sounds like marbles. But there's places that people feel so familiar with. Another place
Yeah.
for me that I love is Montreal. And,
Mm.
I could live there in a nanosecond. I mean, it resonates, the food, the style, the personality of people who are in that city.
Yeah.
And the food. I mean, where I live at right now, there's a kind of French restaurant, and there's a French restaurant that is incredibly expensive to go to. But I have to say, I've only been there once, and I liked the food, so I probably will go back. But there's a very hard place up here to find actually really good food.
Mm.
Um, and there's a lot of vineyards here and a lot of cows, more cows than there are people. So
Wow.
one of the thing I'm craving in my life right now is more people. It's
Yeah.
more
Right.
people, it's just because there's more the Jew, and there's only, one of the reasons why I retired early. I retired like when I was 42, and I went back to work like maybe like 17 years later, 15 years later. I just saw a lot of people who were sick and they didn't know it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who like nobody home and walking around Boston, and I would ask, "Or do you think you're a person or do you think you're a person or a human being?" And they would say there's like a lot of major hospitals there. So, and my goal was asking that because I always had this impression that most medical doctors were not people, or so they're not human beings. Um, and and so the one person that I asked, I was by Brigham and Women's Hospital, and I was going back to catch the trolley because I had
Mm.
a doctor's appointment. And I said, "What do you think you are, a human being or a person?" And he said, "Both." And I stopped and looked at him. I said, "You must be a medical doctor." I said, "An evolved one." And he goes, "I am." And I said, and then, he was interviewing for his residency, and he was like really high energy that day and really hopeful, and I said, "Well, if you end up coming here, here's my phone number." I said, "Give me a call after you're here for 6 months. I want to make sure I'll double check with you to make sure you're both." and,
Yeah.
and that, but but everyone I met who asked that question to, nobody didn't answer me. And everyone said they were human beings, and I said that they thought of themselves as being human beings. But only the
Mm.
person, only that MD doctor said, "I'm both." And I went, "Whoa, at least he's honest."
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, on that piece.
So interesting.
Yeah, and there's so many things that, create people's freedom,
Mm.
for their health and their lifestyle and their mindset and their all their mentality. And, you just have to, always like let something happen. You don't, I always tell when have female clients who are having relationship issues, I just like, don't do anything. They went, "Yes, but I said, "No, it's because you have to explain it to yourself." And I
Mm.
said, You already did that, so why are you doing it again?" I said,
Yeah.
"So just go and do your life." And I go, and then like I said, "That's the hook." You always want to start a story with a strong hook. I said, "So start your story, with a strong hook, and if they're paying attention, they're gonna go like, 'Where is she?'" And then just I
Mm.
go, and give it like, 3 hours before you answer any message. So they'll never know.
Yeah.
But like I've had people that, are high performers but they don't handle their personal relationships very well. So sometimes,
Mm.
you're looking at, that you're looking at food, you're looking at, what's positive, what's negative, or do you really realize how negative you really are? you know,
Mm.
and what fears you have and where those fears come from and what you can do about them so you don't ever have to let anything disturb your peace of mind ever.
Yeah.
You can let it jar it sometimes, but it doesn't own you. You own it.
Yeah.
And that's my personal philosophy and my
Mm,
professional philosophy pretty much on everything.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
love
good.
it. It's good. It's good.
It's good.
Love it.
It's good.
Oh, Dr. Pat, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've loved every minute.
Yeah, we had a great time.
We
Everything
did.
everything that I prepared to talk about, we didn't. But the or, you know,
I'm sorry, this is normally the way. I send on a guide and then we just flow.
yeah, but it's really interesting because it made me focus in a very different way. Because I'm
Mm.
used to doing like podcasts. I've done over 300 of them. So it's just like when I get on
Wow.
a podcast, I have, there's no question that somebody can give me that stumps me. I mean, so far, I
Yeah.
mean, knock on wood. But I like the challenge. And also, like, I learn, like, for instance, some of the questions that you sent me that as a guideline, which I thought were great. And I said, "Does she think we're really gonna get through all this in an hour?" You
Stop.
know?
I know.
So, I laughed, I'm going like, "Oh my god." If you really, really wanna, like, thrive, that's, like, one of the things that was in the intro, right, that we're talking about when you
Yeah.
do the intro, it's like, I like to see people thrive, and you can't preach thriving to somebody or health to somebody unless you're doing it yourself.
Yeah.
When I
It's
see a fat
I completely
doctor,
agree with you.
oh man, I used to see these guys in chiropractic school outside, like smoking cigarettes. I'm going like, how? I said, so how can you tell someone about health? Like when you're like 80 pounds overweight, unless you've got a specific condition, how do you do that? I can't tell you. I can tell you that I don't take any prescription drugs and I don't take anything over the counter. But I do take supplements to do very specific things so my body has nutrients that it perhaps and more than likely is not getting.
Yeah.
For a woman, you could always tell when your skin's changing and when your health might be changing when you start getting brown spots on your face. These are from sailing, But if you start seeing like other like places, it's glycation happening in your body. It's what's aging you. I mean, when you eat French fries, you're aging yourself eating French fries. I is there and they're so good, aren't they? Especially with
They're
mayonnaise on
so
them.
tasty.
It's or Tabasco. I like hot stuff. How many times do I have French fries? Like once every 8 months, something like that, and I don't have to have all of them. And
Yeah.
then who's ever sitting next to you goes, "Hey, do you want some French fries? They're really good. Let's age you." Like, here's
What is it about the French fries that's aging you?
it's fried and hydrogenated oil. The liver's gotta process it. It's also a starch, and when you eat starch, your glucose levels go up, and when your glucose
Mhm.
levels go up, then the problem is it's just like and if you don't stabilize them, that's what GLP does, and also cuts your appetite, and so if you're eating things that are glycated, like steak on the grill, if you eat steak and you have it on the grill, it's awesome, but it's just like but people sometimes live their whole life on the grill.
Yeah.
You know? And so those particles, I mean, you're like, especially if it's gas grill, your gas is on your food.
Mm.
I had a Caesar salad one time, a grilled Caesar salad. It tasted like the gasoline it was cooked in. I went, you got to get this. I can't eat this. Yeah, it tastes like gasoline. And it just was like the idea of it intrigued me. But I said, "Can I have a regular one?" And don't forget to put
Yeah.
the anchovies in it because I want my omegas. And so the when people eat, like, things that are fried, and especially, like, w women have bras on, so that bra strap goes right across the, area that's a tonification point for needling and acupuncture for the gallbladder and liver. And so if you have constant compression on it, ultimately, I always say this irritates those organ systems. It's like having constant stimulation on it. More women than men have their gallbladder out. And people go like, "Why don't you
What?
have my gallbladder? It isn't important anymore." I said, "What the gallbladder does is crucial in metabolizing fats. So
Yeah.
now your
Yeah.
liver is still making the bile. When people take things like Prilosec or proton pump inhibitors, it's just like you're inhibiting the gut from doing its job. And why is that? Why do you not have enough hydrochloric acid in the coating for it? Because that's what the gallbladder, like it does. That bile coats the stomach so you don't burn a hole through it. Yeah, and
Mm.
so you have to have those things. So, like, how do you accommodate for that?
Do I
And
need to
so
take off my bra?
yes, let's liberate and burn them. So,
Should
but
we not be wearing them as much as we are?
like I always think if you're home, you like why bother? And
Mm.
it's just like if you got to go out, so it's just a second. I've got to put my bra back on. But like I wear one in the office, and when you wear it, what happens when muscles get constricted? Someone breaks their arm and they have a cast on it.
Yeah.
The muscles atrophy. When the muscles atrophy, they get weak. And it's just like when you start accumulating superficial fat in your body, where does it go? Normally to your belly, your breasts, your legs, especially if you're a woman. And that fat likes things like organ systems like ovaries, and it likes the brain, and it likes all the omentum around the gut and around the small intestine and large intestine. There's fat there, and it's there for a reason. Before people get diabetes, pre-diabetic, they always have a fatty liver. You get a fatty liver by eating crappy food
Yeah.
and by eating too much fruit. You can eat
By
fruit.
eating too much fruit.
Yeah, because they say that, you have 5 servings of, they always say fruit first and vegetables. I always say vegetables first because what you hear first is what you go, "Okay," and then you, like, erase the rest of it.
Yeah.
Like someone who's that's like, "Hey, that's like ADD, so you don't have to worry about, like, remembering the rest of it. I can eat fruit," and that's
Mm.
what they hear in the sugar. It's just like, it's better for you to eat vegetables than it is for you to eat fruit. You don't need fruit to live on. It gives you fiber, but
Mm.
you need vegetables because vegetables also have high levels, especially green leafy vegetables have high levels of magnesium and calcium,
Yeah.
and then you have to take a look at broccoli versus non-real broccoli, like the, organic, and everything when I grew up was organic. They didn't have like,
Mm.
the seeds, the GMO seeds and things like that. Um, but you have to take a look at like where's my food source? Where's my coffee come from? Because coffee, I love coffee. Coffee is an antioxidant. It's really good coffee. But you got to make sure that you know where it's sourced. You got to know what's the mold. A lot of vegetables and fruits also have a lot of mold in them because they're stored. And
Yeah.
they're sprayed. The problem with spraying is that not necessarily when they sprayed when they were first like there to get the insects off, although I don't think you should use them at all. But
Mm.
they spray them just before they go to market. So you're eating a lot of chemicals when
Yeah.
they go to market. That's why buying organic is more important.
So
And
important.
Yep, and it's just like and it's an investment. You either invest now or you invest later, and most people invest later living in nursing homes or assisted living
Yeah.
homes because, or they need more help. And there's,
Yeah.
like, where there's in they have arthritis. Well, why do they have arthritis? The joint's not in it's supposed to be in alignment. It's supposed to work like this. The joint gets if it's not in alignment, and let's say it's, like, slightly off, so it's sort of like this, it's over here like this. I mean, if you put your hands like that, it doesn't feel normal, right? You always can
Mm.
fold your hands, and then you fold the other way. That's like a bone like a segment that's not in alignment with each other. It feels odd, and then you get used to it
Yeah.
because that becomes the new normal. So there's a lot of things. We could talk for
Oh my God. I'm like, please, can we stay in touch?
hours. Absolutely, absolutely. I'm always looking for really good clients because I like to see people do well. Sometimes I work with people for a month. It depends upon what I'm working with them on. It depends upon how long I'm working, like what I have to do. If it's complicated, then it costs money
Mm.
for sure. And it takes longer, so I take that in account when I'm like pricing something out. And then how much time do they have and like, are they willing to really do what it takes to be healthy?
Yeah.
Because if they're not, then I don't want to waste people's money and I don't want to waste
Yeah.
people's time. And I don't want people to waste my time either. Uh,
One question before we go. What are your thoughts on HRT?
I wouldn't do it. Because I think that, people who have that issue anyway, if you look back at some of their lifestyle habits, they're using a lot of plastics around them because the average, like, you can do it. It's a two-way fence. If I'm sitting on a fence, I would say to somebody that it's a perfect thing for you, but you also have a lifestyle that supports you being healthy.
Yeah.
And then there's the
Okay.
other person who is just like, there are they have a horrible lifestyle. They have other issues, like emotional issues and things. They don't need more hormones.
Yeah.
They need to have first stabilize their gut because everything that you eat affects you hormonally. You're either feeding the disease or you're feeding your life,
Okay.
and so it's just like you're going like, well, what is it? And what's the source of the hormonal replacement therapy? It's just that's what
Okay.
so um and also somebody I said to somebody yesterday exactly. I said, they said something about menopause and I said, oh I go she's a former attorney. And, she's funny as all heck, and she said, "Oh my" this is in the waiting room, when we're walking, like, out. She said, "Gee" and there's women sitting she goes, Doctor Pat, you're gonna hate her." And because she's never had a menopausal symptom.
What?
And I said, I've never had PMS, and I never had any menopausal symptoms. I never had a hot flash or ever, but I never ate sugar.
You never ate sugar.
I never ate I
Are
s
would you include carbs in that?
It depends on what kind of carbs they are, 'cause carbohydrate
Potatoes?
huh? Potatoes
Potatoes?
potatoes are a huge starch, and they drive glucose levels up. I mean, it's hard I had an Irish woman when I first had my practice, I said, "You have to stop eating potatoes." And she looked at me and she said, "Why? I'm Irish. Do you know what you're saying to me?" I said, "Yeah, I know. If you're Chinese, I'd tell you to stop eating rice." And I said, "But you have to stop eating potatoes at least for 6 months." And it's because the starch when you cook it, potatoes are probably better for you to eat raw than they are for you to eat cooked. Because when you cook them, there's a high level of starch and your glucose levels go all over the place. That's why you would have to take something natural to help support that, like berberine, something like that, you know, um,
Okay.
that would support that. But you shouldn't eat potatoes. You should give them up for 1 month to see how you feel.
Oh my god. Doctor Pat, you are making me reevaluate my whole life. I
Well, you should. It's just like you're like, "What is it that I'm willing to do?" It's just like,
anything.
"Can I have a like, now I bought this is odd, so I bought an organic potato. This one thing was about this big over here at the store. I bought 2 of them. I cooked them, and then I, cut them up as I need them in, like, cubes because I put maybe, like, an eighth of a cup on top of a salad, but I can
Mm,
eat potatoes like that. But I never eat corn. It has to be organic
okay.
for me to consider it, and
Yeah.
I don't eat peas, unless
I
they're
love peas.
organic. They're sugar.
Maybe that's why I love them.
That's probably why, like, we call it sugar peas. Or like this guy said, I fixed this guy's back, and he took his girlfriend to this plum orchard to collect plums. And he brought me back a small bag of them. And he said, "It's really weird, like, I was feeling really good when I left here Friday." And he said and then we Saturday morning, we got up early and we drove to this orchard, and then, and we picked them, and I said, "Did you eat them while you were picking them?" "I did." And I go, "So on Monday morning, you woke up, you couldn't move, right?" That's why he was back in my office before he was supposed to be back in my office, and that because that sugar increases inflammation, sugar plums.
Oh my god.
It's like plums. People go like, "No, there's sugar plums. There's a lot of sugar in fruit." So it's just like I don't like peaches. I like nectarines if I eat them. I even
Yeah.
can't remember. I think I had like one nectarine 2 years ago, but I look at like what's my trade-off? It's just like what do I get from that? Do I feel better after I eat that? Not really. Some people go like, "Oh, I got energy." Well, it's because you're you're eating fructose, and fructose isn't handled in the stomach, it's handled in the liver. That's why watching, especially for diabetic, watching how much fruit you actually eat is crucial. Yeah, and how you do anything is how you do everything. So since you wait till the Wi-Fi bill needs to be paid, or after it's already supposed to have been paid, your car needs to be fixed, it's just like you do the same thing with your body. What do you expect? You know, it's just like have no
Wow.
it's like you gotta stop having sympathy, like, the devil's doing a good job at but, you know, you have to take a look at, like, so, like food, if this is I'm fueling my body, what is it that I'm fueling my body with? Because you
Mm.
wouldn't run a Ferrari on economy. You just wouldn't do it, and if you
I totally agree.
yeah, and I believe your body's a Ferrari or a
Yeah.
Lamborghini, something that's fine-tuned. It's
Mm.
just like and when you're feeling like that, you know it because when you walk into a room, every head turns. Every head, even the girls. Yeah, it's just like and they're all like, "Wow, you look really great. What did you do?" "Oh, I'm not eating
Mm.
crappy food anymore."
Yeah.
So at any rate, I super enjoyed spending time with you. You know, I
This
was
has been amazing. Thank you so much.
oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you so much.